I use, this is what I believe in. This is mightier than any weapon that's out there. Voting. You have to vote. You have to register to vote. That is mightier than anything the Republicans can throw at us. Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert told members of the House Natural Resources Committee last Wednesday that despite House rules, she walks around the Capitol with a loaded pistol. This is Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She's a MAGA Florida Republican. This is her first term. She told the same committee on Wednesday that she, too, is walking around the Capitol with a fully loaded pistol. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who now sits on the Homeland Security Committee, before becoming a member of Congress, according to CNN, she indicated support for executing prominent Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, President Barack Obama, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Well, when she first came to Congress about 2 years ago, she was stripped of all her committee assignments because she was advocating violence against her fellow members. She, too, believes members of Congress should be allowed to walk around the Capitol fully armed. Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, she is the number 3 in the House leadership. It's McCarthy, Scalise, and then Elise Stefanik. She's number 3 in the Republican House leadership, and she is married to Matthew Manda, one of Washington's top lobbyists for gun manufacturers, which is why on January 3rd of this year, when the Republicans took back control of the House of Representatives, metal detectors were removed from outside the House chamber. Now, while members of Congress are still forbidden from bringing loaded weapons into the Capitol and onto the House floor, this rule is no longer being enforced because
it's all about freedom.
That's Texas Republican Congressman Troy Nehls, who says it's all about freedom. Not my freedom, not your freedom. It's all about the freedom of corporations to pollute our water, poison our food, and of course, sell us all the guns we need to kill 50,000 Americans this year.
It's all about freedom.
Yes, it is. It's all about freedom. What do you think? What do you think? Are you comfortable with members of Congress showing up to work fully loaded? And I don't mean drunk. Would you be comfortable working with colleagues who are packing heat? How likely are we to have a civilized debate about, renewing the assault weapons ban, knowing one side of the aisle who doesn't want to renew the assault weapons ban is packing a weapon? Is allowing members of Congress, do you think allowing members of Congress to bring weapons into the chamber, do you think this is a not so subtle erosion of democracy? I do. The crazies drove everyone out of the Republican Party. There's nobody left inside the Republican Party unless you're a crazy. It's not safe to be a sane Republican anymore. I'm being serious. When you ask the Republican members of Congress why they quit after Trump seized power, they all said they no longer felt safe. They said it off the record. Most of them said it off the record. But every single Republican who quit after Trump took office said they did so because they did not feel safe. Now, are these crazies, are these Republican crazies going to start driving Democrats out of Washington too? Is that the plan? Let me ask you, would you serve in Congress knowing that Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are walking around carrying weapons, loaded weapons? Let me know in the comment section down below. I read all the comments, and I try to respond to some, especially the ones that make me laugh or the ones that provide me with information. If you send me a link in the comments section down below for an article I should read, I usually thank you. You'll know I read your comment if there's a heart next to it. So please leave a comment. I read all the comments. And while you're leaving a comment, please subscribe to my show so you don't miss any episodes. More importantly, I don't have any corporate funding. This is all grassroots. Nobody knows who I am. So I need you to do me a favor and share this episode, if you like it. Share this episode with your friends on social media or through email. If you really want to help me, if you enjoy this show and you want to support my work, the best thing you could do for me is to copy the link to this episode and share it. This is from the Washington Post. By January 24th of 2023, there were nearly 40 mass shootings here in America. That's a brand new record for January, beating the previous record from last January. By January 23rd of this year, America had 1,214 gun deaths for 2023. Record gun deaths here in America year after year. It went down. I'm showing you a chart now. You can see in 2021 it went down a little. It went down a little in 2022. It peaked in 2021, but pretty much record gun deaths year after year. And what weapon are Republicans most concerned about? Government. Yes, they're saying our government has been weaponized. Thank you, Dr. Frank Luntz. There's an epidemic of gun violence, so the party that gets its money from the gun lobby has been taught by Dr. Frank Luntz to deflect, and it insists that it's the government that has been weaponized, not a handful of impotent, self-loathing incels who have been weaponized. No, Dr. Frank Luntz taught Republicans to twist language, insist the FBI, the IRS, the Justice Department, they're the ones who have been weaponized. It's not the gun-toting, low-information, mental deficients desperately in need of psychiatric help. No. It's the government. It's the government that's weaponized. And these Republican warts on humanity who think the government has been weaponized, they need guns to protect themselves from that government, the very same government that builds their roads, provides them with whatever social safety net there's left. I can assure you most of the people who are stockpiling guns to protect themselves from the government need that government. They have no problem cashing our evil government's checks. Only in America could these parasitic genetic deformities get away with convincing themselves and others that they are the rightful party of Jesus. Here is Donald Trump. Here he is on our weaponized government.
We have a weaponized justice system like this country has never seen before. The FBI.
Right. It's the Justice Department that's been weaponized. The FBI is weaponized because you refuse to turn over classified documents. So it's the FBI that's been weaponized. It's the Justice Department that's been weaponized because you incited an insurrection. But when weaponized cops shoot an unweaponized black man in the back, Republicans stand with the officer because it's hard out there for cops. We need to show them love. This is opportunistic infection, and number 3 Republican leader in the House, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. There are many reasons to loathe, and I don't think loathe is too strong a word. There are many reasons to despise Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Her incredibly rich father bought her a brand new BMW after she graduated from high school, which she famously drove all over Cambridge and Boston while attending Harvard. She listed her parents' vacation home as her residence in order to claim she lives among the rubes in the heavily rural 21st Congressional District she deigns to represent. She was a never Trumper until she saw the writing on the wall and became a MAGA Trumper. But the number one reason to hate Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is because of who she loves, this guy. Elise Stefanik is married to Matthew Manda, a toad-faced sewer rat who works as manager of public affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is based in Newtown, Connecticut. Now, if Newtown, Connecticut sounds familiar, that's because Newtown, Connecticut, not just being the headquarters for National Shooting Sports Foundation, it's also where Adam Lanza, on December 14th, 2012, took a Bushmaster AR-15 rifle, a Glock 10mm, and a Sig Sauer 9mm into Sandy Hook Elementary School and shot 6 adults plus 20 children to death. Lanza, the bad guy with a gun, ended his killing spree by shooting himself to death, thereby becoming the good guy with a gun. Bad guy with a gun becomes good guy with a gun. And as far as this Republican Party is concerned, you can transition from a bad guy with a gun to a good guy with a gun, but don't you dare transition from being a bad guy with a gun to being a good girl with a gun. Then stay away from our children.
It's all about freedom.
Yes, it is. It's all about freedom, isn't it, Congressman Troy Nell? Matthew Manda, like I said, is married to Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, and his National Shooting Sports Foundation, like the NRA, is a front for the gun industry. Wendy Liberatore last year wrote over at the Times-Union. The Times-Union covers the congressional district in upstate New York, which the Harvard-educated, my daddy bought me a brand new BMW for a high school graduation gift, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik represents. Did I mention Elise Stefanik listed her parents' vacation home as her residence to prove she lives among the hayseeds in her heavily rural congressional district? Well, anyway, according to the Times-Union, opportunistic infection Elise Stefanik's husband, Matthew Manda, is the manager of public affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and it is his job, surprisingly enough, you're not going to believe this, it is his job to lobby Congress on behalf of gun manufacturers. Wendy Liberatore over at the Times-Union writes that last year, as the debate over gun control heats up following back-to-back mass shootings, the industry has a spokesman with unparalleled access to U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik, the number 3 Republican in the House, her husband, and his name is Matthew Manda. Elise Stefanik is literally in bed with the gun lobby. Elise Stefanik's husband, Matthew Manda, gets up every day, goes to work, and tries to get more and more guns into the hands of active shooters because there's big money to be made in selling weapons to nutcases like the shooter who, back in 2017, almost killed Steve Scalise, the number 2 leader in the House. You can see him standing right behind Elise Stefanik. So let's learn more about Matthew Manda's National Shooting Sports Foundation. Do you remember last year's shooting in Uvalde, Texas? Do you remember that? Well, say hello to Marty Daniel. He makes the weapon that was used to kill all those beautiful souls. Marty Daniels is the head of Daniel Defense, and he makes the AR-15 that was used in all your favorite school shootings, including Uvalde. Here he is. Here is Marty Daniel of Daniel Defense. Here he is telling us why he loves Matthew Manda's National Shooting Sports Foundation.
They're very good on the data.
Oh, they're very good on the data. Oh, that's good. So Elise Stefanik's husband is very good on the data. That's good to know. So I'm sure Matthew Manda, Elise Stefanik's husband, sends out the daily data of children killed by guns, showing that firearms are the number one leading cause of death for American children and teenagers. That's according to the CDC. Firearms are the number one leading cause of death for American children and teens. Last year, according to the CDC, in 2020, according to the CDC, 4,357 children died from guns. 3,639 died from car accidents. And it's interesting because not everybody owns a firearm, but pretty much everyone either owns a car or travels in a car, yet guns still kill way, way more children. I wonder why. Could it have anything to do with cars being regulated? You need a license. You must pass a test to drive a car. I think that might have something to do with it, don't you? Let's break down the numbers here. Of the 2020, of all the children who were killed by guns, 2,811 were murdered. And even worse, I think, 1,293 used those guns to commit suicide. Yeah. Standing behind Elise Stefanik is the number 2 man in the House, Steve Scalise, who represents Louisiana, right? This is Steve Scalise back in 2017 in a stretcher after he was shot by an assassin trying to take out Republican congressmen practicing for a charity baseball game. Scalise would have bled out had it not been for the Capitol Police being on the scene to airlift him to a nearby hospital. This is Steve Scalise in the ICU, where surgeons had to rebuild shattered internal organs and bones. And of course, he nearly died from the gunshot wound. They couldn't stop the bleeding. This is Congressman Steve Scalise on the road to recovery. The bullet shattered his hip, and he had to learn how to walk all over again. But God bless this man, Steve Scalise. Getting shot, coming this close to death, didn't shake his resolve to keep on taking campaign contributions from the National Rifle Association. Here he is speaking at the NRA convention 2 years after being shot. And I think we can all agree that Steve Scalise earned every penny, every red cent the NRA or Matthew Manda's National Shooting Sports Foundation donated to him. But let's not forget that Steve Scalise didn't do it all alone. There are also the children, specifically the children from the great state of Louisiana that Steve Scalise represents. Let's take a look at this chart from the CDC, which reports that children in Louisiana get shot to death more than children in any other state here in America. Look at that. Quite impressive. This is from 2020, and it's from the CDC. For every 100,000 children living in Steve Scalise's Louisiana, 12.9 will be shot to death. Now, I'm not talking about getting wounded by a gun. I'm not talking about a child witnessing a mass shooting. I'm talking dead children. For every 100,000 children living in Steve Scalise's Louisiana, 12.9 will be shot to death. And unlike Steve Scalise, they don't get any money from the gun lobby. They make the ultimate sacrifice for our right to bear arms, and they don't get a red cent. Take a look at this. Remember Sarah Palin, that inflamed ulceration of the thyroid in Lipstick and Heels? Sarah Palin is a huge supporter of gun rights. Well, her home state, Alaska, comes in second, right? For every 100,000 children living in Sarah Palin's Alaska, 12 will be killed by guns. Okay, then comes Mississippi, South Carolina, Arkansas, Kansas, Indiana, Kentucky, Missouri, and Alabama. Those are the states where children are most likely to get shot to death. And what? What do these states all have in common? You can't get an abortion. You can't get an abortion there, but you can get a gun. And they all resisted Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. You see, they love children right up until they're born. These are called red states. And I'm not sure if they're red from the blood or the embarrassment. Well, a month after the Times-Union broke the story about Elise Stefanik's husband, Matthew Manda, Tim Dickinson, in June of 2022, wrote about Elise Stefanik's husband for Rolling Stone when he reported that the National Shooting Sports Foundation spent $5 million on lobbying Congress in 2021 alone. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik herself has received at least $20,000 in campaign donations from her husband's organization, and that doesn't include the speaking gigs she's done for him. But even worse, her husband is not a registered lobbyist, according to Rolling Stone. According to Tim Dickinson in Rolling Stone magazine, her husband is not a registered lobbyist, but technically speaking, he's not lobbying the halls of Congress. He's lobbying the thralls of sexual Congress. Wow, that was horrible. Well, I apologize that if Jesse Jackson had said that in 1988, it would have sounded right. He's lobbying the thralls of sexual Congress. Okay, not good. I apologize. But there she is, this opportunistic infection, Harvard's very own Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, married to a gun lobbyist, telling the American people that it's the government that's been weaponized. It's the government, right? This year, 50,000 Americans will die from her husband's guns. But she insists,
we will vote to protect every American's constitutional rights with the new select subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government.
Yes, it's the weaponization of the federal government. And apparently, this weaponization includes fully weaponized members of Congress, specifically fully weaponized Republican members of Congress. And this has Democratic Congressman Jared Huffman from California deeply concerned. Politico reported that last Wednesday, the House Natural Resources Committee, under Republican leadership, voted against banning their members from bringing guns to their meetings. Members of Congress, I thought, are banned from carrying loaded weapons onto the House floor, or while they're walking around the Capitol, they're not allowed to carry loaded weapons. And they're certainly not allowed, according to the Capitol Police, to carry loaded weapons into committee meetings. But apparently, this rule isn't followed by everyone. And so, Democratic Congressman Jared Huffman, worried about his own security, asked his fellow members of the House Natural Resources Committee, it's a reasonable question, how many of you are carrying weapons? And Congresswoman Lauren Boebert had an answer. This is video from Politico.
How many members feel like they would need to carry a weapon into our committee hearings? Got
I
one?
feel I need one everywhere here.
Everywhere?
Oftentimes we are
Sure.
harassed in the hallways. We walk
The
alone.
gentleman hasn't yielded.
And just and would those be loaded weapons, presumably?
Not an unloaded weapon.
Okay, that's helpful to know too.
Okay, that's helpful to know too. Not an unloaded weapon, so says Lauren Boebert, Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who openly admits that she walks around the halls of Congress carrying a loaded weapon. I think in direct violation of House rules, especially after January 6th. This is how Colorado lawmaker, Republican Lauren Boebert, runs for office. She poses for campaign pictures. I don't know if you can see that. She poses for pictures carrying her trusty sidearm. That's Lauren Boebert. And the Charis Christian Center Family Camp holds a meeting every year in Colorado. And last year they asked Lauren Boebert, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, to speak at the Charis Christian Center Family Camp meeting. And here is Congresswoman Lauren Boebert talking about how she prays for our president, how she prays for Joe Biden's death. Here she is talking about how she prays for President Biden's death. Now, when you watch this, keep in mind this is a Christian family camp meeting.
I do want you to know I pray for our president. Psalm 109:8 says, "May his days be few and another take his office." Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Glory to God.
Glory to God. Not my God. Not my God. It's so funny. Listen to them. Listen to them. It's so funny. And by the way, that was a family Christian camp where she said that in front of children. They care so much about the kids, don't they? This is from the Tennessee Holler. It's a newspaper in Tennessee. This is video of Congresswoman Lauren Boebert last October addressing the Knox County Republican Party Lincoln Day dinner in Knoxville, Tennessee.
In all seriousness, there is a calling on each and every one of you to be involved and to rise up. It is an honor to serve in this time, to be disheartened, but a time to rejoice. You get to be a part of ushering in the second coming of Jesus.
I'm going to play that again. She's saying this is a special calling, a special time in American history because you get to play a part in the second coming of Jesus. Now listen carefully.
In all seriousness, there is a calling on each and every one of you to be involved and to rise up. It is an honor to serve in this time, to be disheartened, but a time to rejoice. You get to be a part of ushering in the second coming of Jesus.
Gun-toting Congresswoman who prays for the death of our president tells her fellow Republicans that we have a calling to usher in the second coming of Jesus. Here is Matt Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz, brandishing assault weapons at a gun show with Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. There they are, holding their assault weapons. On January 6, 2021, only hours before the January 6, 2021 insurrection, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert tweeted, "Today is 1776. Most of you know by now that during the actual insurrection, she famously tweeted out the whereabouts of Nancy Pelosi. The Durango Herald is a newspaper in Lauren Boebert's home district, and they have a piece that points out that Cassidy Hutchinson, who was an assistant to Donald Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, if you remember, Cassidy Hutchinson testified before the January 6th committee last year, and she said that gun-toting Congresswoman Lauren Boebert was involved in the early planning of January 6th. Remember the plans? She participated in the early plans to bring in busloads of, let's call them protesters, not insurrectionists, to try to halt the counting of votes. The Durango Herald goes on to write, U.S. Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado was involved in the beginning stages of talks with senior White House officials that ultimately led to efforts by former President Donald Trump and his allies to decertify the 2020 election results, a former top aide told congressional investigators. The article continues. Cassidy Hutchinson, a former assistant to White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, identified Boebert as one of a small group of Republican lawmakers who met with Meadows as early as the last week of November 2020 to raise the idea of former Vice President Mike Pence intervening to prevent the certification of election results by Congress on January 6, 2021. The ensuing assault on the U.S. Capitol by a mob of Trump supporters that day led to the deaths of 5 people and Trump's eventual second impeachment trial. So let's go back to California Democrat Congressman Jared Huffman, who is on the same committee as Lauren Boebert. And during last week's committee meeting, he addressed the wisdom of someone like Lauren Boebert being allowed to walk around the Capitol with a loaded pistol or bring a loaded pistol into the committee room.
No one should have to worry about members of the other side of the aisle, let alone members who have incited political violence, bringing weapons in violation of House rules into our committee room.
Do you
And I
think we're
yelled
going to
back.
hurt you? We would never hurt you. I would use my farm to defend you, just to be clear.
Yeah, that was the voice of Republican Congresswoman Paulina Luna, MAGA from Florida, supported by Donald Trump. Do you think I would use my weapon to hurt you? I would use it. I would use it to defend you. Oh, isn't that sweet? Well, here is Congressman Luna on Fox News assuring everyone it's not weaponized cretins like herself we have to worry about. No, we need to be concerned about
Weaponized 87,000 IRS agents.
Yes, we have to worry about the weaponized 87,000 IRS agents who I don't believe are carrying weapons. That's our biggest fear, IRS agents who don't have any weapons. Congressman Ruben Gallego is a Democrat from Arizona who also sits on that committee. He is running for Kyrsten Sinema's seat in 2024 after Kyrsten Sinema announced that she is no longer a Democrat. And during the committee hearing, he wanted to get back to Lauren Boebert's love affair with guns. and how she likes to play dress up with guns. And, you know, Ruben Gallego also likes to play dress up with guns. Here he is back in 2005 in Iraq. That's him second on the left, you know, playing dress up with guns. That's he's with one of his fallen soldiers. He posted this to remember one of his fellow soldiers who died with him. He didn't die with him. He died in Iraq while he was serving with him in Iraq. And so having seen what guns actually do, he decided to remind Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of the role she played on January 6th.
The member from Colorado forgot to mention January 6th as also an assault on representatives.
Yes, it was awful when Ashley Babbitt was murdered.
Wow.
And you don't care about the 100 other police officers.
Unbelievable. I mean, I'm just going to play this again. This is how she talks to Congressman Ruben Gallego, who actually served in Iraq, doesn't play dress up, and this is him expressing concern for the safety of all the members of Congress on January 6th and the Capitol Police. This is Lauren Boebert's glib response.
The member from Colorado forgot to mention January 6th as also an assault on representatives.
Yes, it was awful when Ashley Babbitt was murdered.
Wow.
And you don't care about the 100 other police officers.
You don't care about the 100 other police officers. No, they do not. I'll get to that in a second. But first, Ashley Babbitt. Fully loaded, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert believes Ashley Babbitt was murdered by Capitol Police on January 6th. It's sad. It's sad that Ashley Babbitt was shot by, she wasn't murdered, was shot by Capitol Police. It's sad when anybody gets shot to death. But this was an insurrection, and Ashley Babbitt and the insurrectionists had smashed through the window of a barricaded door that led into Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office, where staffers at the time were cowering in closets and underneath desks. And Ashley Babbitt, along with her fellow insurrectionists, she was attempting to crawl through that window to find Nancy Pelosi and do what? They were screaming, "Hang her!" And so she was shot to death. Now, I'm going to be generous here because I don't like to see anybody shot to death. So for argument's sake, let's not call this an insurrection. It was an insurrection, but for argument's sake, let's just say it wasn't an insurrection on January 6th, that they weren't going to hang Nancy Pelosi or Mike Pence, okay? For argument's sake, we will not call it an insurrection, but there is no question that it was a riot that got out of hand, and looting was taking place. Windows were smashed, property stolen, and it came to roughly $30 million in damages, according to the architect of the Capitol. So this was a riot. This was looting. There's video of them stealing wallets from people's jackets. You know, people, I think people who broke into Nancy Pelosi's office found jackets with wallets, and they just took the wallets. This was definitely looting. And we can all agree that smashing windows, mirrors, destroying furniture, stealing jackets and wallets, that is looting, okay? I'm being generous here. We're not calling it an insurrection. These Trump supporters on January 6th were destroying something that Donald Trump cares more about than human beings, property. They were destroying property. And looters, according to the Republican ethos, will be shot on sight. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Hurricane Katrina, where Republicans were saying to the African Americans who were left stranded, they were being warned, looters will be shot on site, as though that was the biggest problem facing Louisiana after Katrina, looting. But that's what Republicans love to say. Looters will be shot on sight. Here is Donald Trump back in 2020 during the George Floyd protests in Minneapolis. Do you remember George Floyd was killed by a police officer, Derek Chauvin, and none of the looting was done by Antifa or Black Lives Matter, but there were common criminals and agent provocateurs setting fire to buildings. And so there was looting. And here is what Trump tweeted in 2020. These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty, and we will assume control. But when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you. That's what he wrote. When the looting starts, the shooting starts, right? When the looting starts, the shooting starts, unless it's Ashley Babbitt breaking windows and trying to find the Speaker of the House on January 6th and hang her. Then, according to Republicans, she was murdered by the Capitol Police. You know, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. If you're just a self-deputized runt of the litter, like 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, who took to the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin, and shot 2 unarmed protesters to death, but was acquitted when he claimed it was all in self-defense. He shot 2 unarmed protesters who weren't looting, and somehow he was acquitted because he acted in self-defense. A judge last week ruled that a wrongful death civil lawsuit can proceed against Kyle Rittenhouse. Anthony Huber was one of the 2 unarmed men Rittenhouse shot to death, and his father has filed a lawsuit against Rittenhouse. But Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero on the right. He is. He's beloved. Why? Because he shot 2 Black Lives Matter protesters to death, who, by the way, weren't looting. Donald Trump, after Kyle's acquittal, invited him down immediately to Mar-a-Lago and declared, quote, "I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. I love your work." But the Capitol Police officer who defended Nancy Pelosi's office and all her staffers hiding in closets and underneath desks, the Capitol Police officer who shot a looter, Ashley Babbitt, a looter, he's vilified by the right because Republicans only love cops when they shoot Black people. And this poses a problem for Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who knows how close he himself came to getting killed on January 6th. But he needs Marjorie Taylor Greene. He needs Lauren Boebert, who have both turned Ashley Babbitt into a martyr. Here he is last week being asked to make a Sophie's choice, to choose between Ashley Babbitt and the Capitol Police who saved his life on January 6th.
Do you think Ashley Babbitt was murdered, or do you think the police officer who shot her was doing his job?
I think the police officer did his job.
He thinks the police officer did his job when he shot Ashley Babbitt. Motion to vacate the chair? The Speaker chooses the Capitol Police over Ashley Babbitt. Motion to vacate the chair. So you can clearly see that members of Congress are concerned that there just aren't insurrectionists among their ranks. There are gun-toting cretins like Lauren Boebert who want to facilitate the second coming of Jesus, and they're packing sidearms to make it so. And it never ends well for these people like Lauren Boebert. It just doesn't. And it also doesn't end well for the people around them. Now, we have red flag laws to prevent people like Lauren Boebert from carrying a weapon. She is the reason we have Capitol Police and metal detectors. And if she weren't an elected member of Congress, she wouldn't be allowed anywhere near the Capitol. But here she was on Wednesday, openly admitting that she's in direct violation of House rules. She's carrying a loaded firearm. Now think of where you work. I'm not making this up. Even Elise Stefanik's husband's National Shooting Sports Foundation, even they don't allow people to walk around with loaded sidearms at their events. They're selling guns, AR-15s. They're promoting sidearms at their events, and you're still not allowed to walk around with a loaded weapon. But Congress? Apparently you can. Apparently you can. You think this is good for democracy? And that concerns Iraqi war veteran Ruben Gallego, who has seen what a gun can do close up in Iraq. He saw what a gun can do, his fallen buddies. So he's a little concerned about members of Congress carrying loaded weapons into committee rooms. So he asked committee chairman, Republican Bruce Westerman, what the actual rules are for this committee. Can members of Congress carry guns? Seems like a reasonable question that Republican committee chairman, Republican Bruce Westerman, would know the answer to.
I do have some questions on it. So the gentlelady from Colorado said that members are allowed to bring weapons into committee rooms. What is the chair's understanding? Are members allowed to bring weapons to the committee room or not? Because I think that's a question of the necessity of this amendment.
The chair follows the rules of the House.
No, I agree that. Now, what is the rule of the House, in your opinion, Mr. Chair? Well, you're going to be the enforcer of this, Mr. Chair. That's why I'm asking. Is it your opinion that a member can bring a weapon here?
The Capitol Police are the enforcer of the rules.
So just so we're clear here, the Westerman, the chair of this Natural Resources Committee, just heard a member of this committee, Lauren Boebert, say she walks around with fully loaded weapons, right? And apparently he is too chicken shit to remind everybody what the laws are in the Capitol. Watch this portrait in cowardice one more time.
What is the rule of the House, in your opinion, Mr. Chair?
That's the pause. And then he says it's up to the police. No, it's up to you to enforce the laws, Chairman. Nobody's allowed to bring guns into the committee room. When Bruce Westerman, by the way, he is a Yale graduate. He studied forestry at Yale. This is what a Yale education gets you. He has a degree in forestry from Yale, Bruce Westerman. He wrote his dissertation answering the age-old question, if a Republican speaks out against gun-toting insurrectionists in the forest, but nobody hears that, does he still get all his campaign contributions? Unbelievable. Would you serve in Congress? Would you work in a place like this where they say, hey, nobody's allowed to bring guns here, but we're not really going to enforce it? Would you want to serve in Congress? Would you take that job? Tom McClintock, a Republican from California, also sits on the Natural Resources Committee. Tom McClintock called the second impeachment of Donald Trump, which was for inciting an insurrection. Remember, they impeached Donald Trump for inciting January 6th. Well, Tom McClintock, Republican from California, he called it, quote, petty, vindictive, and gratuitous to impeach Donald Trump over a mere insurrection. Anyway, he had had enough that day on Wednesday at the committee hearing. He had enough of all these namby-pamby Democrats whining about their fellow Republican committee members bringing fully loaded weapons into the Capitol. And as usual, he went after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because Republican men love verbally assaulting her. And he went after other Democrats on the committee. I apologize to my podcast listeners because you really do have to see this next clip. This is, without a doubt, one of the most incredible things I've seen, well, in the past week. Here is Congressman McClintock.
I just wonder if the gentleman from California or the gentlelady from New York has reason to believe that there is a homicidal maniac amongst us.
This is from Politico, and they kept the three-shot. So Representative Tom McClintock, Republican from California, very condescendingly said to AOC, he wants to know if there's a homicidal maniac amongst us. Can we pull in? Can we get a little closer? Who is that to the right of McClintock? Is that who I think it is? Can we get a little closer? Yeah. That's Congressman Paul Gosar sitting to the right of McClintock. Paul Gosar, Republican from Arizona, was sitting to the right of Congressman McClintock when McClintock asked if there's a homicidal maniac amongst us. Yes, in answer to your question, yes, there is a homicidal maniac amongst us. Turn your head to the right and cough and give him COVID. Congressman Paul Gosar, who asked for a pardon from Donald Trump after January 6th because he helped orchestrate January 6th. Is there a homicidal maniac amongst us? Paul Gosar was stripped of all his committee assignments. He just got them back after he took to social media promoting homicidal, maniacal violence against Nancy Pelosi. Paul Gosar, besides being a danger, he's a dentist. You know, that should tell you everything you need to know. This is from the New York Times in 2018. In 2018, Paul Gosar's 6 brothers and sisters endorsed his opponent, claiming Paul Gosar had something wrong with him. Sorry. I shouldn't make fun of homicidal maniacs, but they said there's something wrong with their dentist brother now serving in Washington. And 6 of his brothers and sisters took out an ad telling the voters of Arizona that he's not good for the country and he shouldn't be in Washington. Then NBC News reported in 2022. This is a story that NBC News did in 2022. They mentioned that family members of Paul Gosar decided to speak out in 2017 after Gosar suggested that the white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where a counter-protester was killed, was a false flag, that the event was actually the product of sympathetic actors seeking to hurt conservative causes. So he's saying that it was a false flag operation. This is also from NBC News. This is from this year. Gosar's brother, Dave Gosar, a Wyoming attorney, said, quote, I consider Paul Gosar a traitor to this country. I consider him a traitor to his family. He doesn't see it, but he's disgraced and dishonored himself. That was an interview he gave after January 6. NBC News also reports that Jennifer Gosar, the youngest of the congressman's 9 siblings, she told NBC News that she's confident her brother, Paul Gosar, played a significant role in the efforts that culminated in the Capitol riot, which is why homicidal maniac amongst us, perhaps, allegedly, Paul Gosar asked Donald Trump for a pardon after January 6. NBC News goes on to report, since the Capitol riot, Gosar has led the defense of those who stormed the Capitol, calling them, quote unquote, peaceful patriots. He said that at a May 12th hearing. He has sought to paint Ashley Babbitt, remember her? He has sought to paint Ashley Babbitt, the rioter who was shot and killed by Capitol Police after attempting to breach an entrance near the House chamber as members and aides were fleeing. He's attempted to portray her as a victim who was, quote unquote, executed, then adding the unnamed officer who shot her was, quote, lying in wait for her. And NBC News reports that Paul Gosar joined 20 House Republicans in voting against awarding congressional gold medals to the officers who defended the Capitol against the mob on January 6th. There were 20 House Republicans who voted against awarding congressional gold medals to the officers who saved their lives. These are homicidal maniacs who are carrying weapons into the Capitol. Here is the great AOC. Here is the great AOC who has been verbally, if not, let's just say verbally harassed and attacked by countless Republican men on the steps of the Capitol and in the halls of the Capitol. They cannot wait to attack her. And here is Congressman Republican McClintock condescending, making the mistake of being condescending to AOC. I think she did a pretty great job.
Name the names and present the evidence before such a catastrophe confronts us.
I am not here to impugn the character of any individual member of this committee. I do believe that the performance demonstrated has shown
Who do you not trust to bring a firearm into a committee room or anywhere else?
I believe that from what I've witnessed, the competence of some members may be something that I would be willing to question.
I think you should give us names before the sun goes down, because we're all in great danger if you're correct.
We're all in great danger because she is correct. Look to your right. You are sitting next to Paul Gosar. You're in a committee room with Lauren Boebert, who just said she doesn't care what the law is, she's carrying heat. Okay? You are all in great danger. Luna, Congresswoman Luna, says she was carrying a gun. Who knows what Paul Gosar, to the right of you, is carrying, other than a virulent strain of syphilis that has clearly eaten through his prefrontal cortex. Think about where you work. Would human resources allow this to take place anywhere other than the United States Capitol? Would they allow that where you work? Would you allow it where you work?
It's all about freedom.
Yeah, it's all about freedom. Thank you. Tell me what you think. Is this about freedom, or is this about the end of democracy? Bringing guns, having fully armed members of Congress walking around the well of the Senate, the House chamber. Is this a not so subtle way to destroy our democracy? I think it is. I think we have a serious problem with guns. They're going to kill not just 50,000 Americans this year. They're going to kill our democracy if they haven't already. I have tremendous respect for the men and women who serve, the Democrats who serve in the House of Representatives and the Senate. They are up against the worst party I have ever seen. These Republicans are the absolute worst I have seen in my lifetime. The crazies have taken over. The gun-toting cretins have taken over the party. They drove out what was left of the moderates in the Republican Party. They all left. I talked about this at the top of the show. You talk to any Republican who left Washington after Trump took office, they will say in private that the reason they left is they no longer felt safe. They weren't safe for their family or themselves. So these crazies drove out the Republicans. They're going to drive out the Democrats. They're going to if they don't get rid of the gun-toting Republicans, we're going to end up, God help us. Leave a comment in the section down below. I read all your comments. I don't respond to all of them. I can't, but I do read the ones. I do read all of them, and I respond to the ones that make me laugh, and the ones that, if you have a link or some information, I really appreciate it. I really do. And while you're leaving a comment, do me a favor, subscribe to this show. That way you don't miss any of our episodes. And as I've mentioned before, I have no corporate underwriting, no corporate funding. I'm not a 501c3. So if you want to help me, the best way to help is to grab the link to this video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and share this with like-minded people. That is the best way to help this show, is to spread the word and share this information. Tucker Carlson, would you like to add anything else?
Up yours.
Thank you. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak.